Hello everyone and welcome. Hopefully you can all hear me. If you can hear me, let me know. I can see that we've only got a few people here, so if you know someone who should be here and is not here and you have contact with them outside of just being here, then please get in contact with them if you've got anyone else who's joining in. Because we've got some very low viewer things at the moment, so I would like to improve that if at all possible. I know quite a few of you have indeed been joining in, so I can see we've got Kennedy, we've got Ben, so hello. I can tell that you've only just been able to hear me, so welcome to those of you who have just joined us. Yeah, for the people that are still going to school, they're still doing the same as you are, but they are being given access to my room to be able to do some extra bits there. So YouTube is being unblocked for them. So yes, there are a few cars at school and all of that sort of thing. There are some people who need to be going into school because of because their parents are key workers, so they are doing important jobs like working in the NHS or even going into shops and being at a shop and serving us food, because obviously it's really important for us to be able to buy food from the shops even in this time. So let's move on with the content of today's lesson, which is Python Turtle. Now this is a new concept for us in this year 10 group. So Python Turtle, I'm sure you've heard of this before, but Python, you know what Python is because we've been using that all the time. But Turtle, back in, let's have a look at, let's search for something for a minute. If we look for, I haven't tried this, so apologize if it doesn't come up with something in that makes sense. But Turtle, I probably should have tried it on my own screen first. Hang on. So please make sure you've opened up the on the Google Drive on the tiny URL the Python Turtle booklet, and hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm talking about there. So let me just, there we go, something. Oops, don't want to open that up. So Turtle, it is something that looks, let me just open a new tab, no, open image in new tab. So this is something that we had back in the 90s, back in our primary schools, where you put a pen in this slot here, and there was this big disc thing that looks a bit like a turtle. It's about the same size as, say, a Roomba nowadays, and it sort of did a very similar thing in that you could tell it to go up, down, left and right, and you could put a pen in here so that if it was on a piece of paper, you could tell it to lift the pen or put the pen down, and it would and you could program it to go forward, left and right, and all of that kind of thing. So this was what was known as a turtle. Now nowadays, obviously, we do a lot of things on the computers themselves, so we can use code to do this. So I'm going to go on to the jumpto.cc/python-new. Make sure you type that into your, if you haven't already, and that allows me to open a brand new thing. You might have something that you've worked on that from before, but this is very similar to what we used last week, but it's not quite as complicated as last week's one. So these, obviously, nowadays you probably use something like this, but much smaller and instead of this, it would be B-bots back in primary school. So in primary school, you would probably use something very similar to this, but instead of this, it was known as a B-bot. And some of you might remember that back from primary school days. But we're going to be using this idea called Python Turtle. So that's why it's called Turtle anyway. Just that's a bit of background there. So that's why it's called Turtle. The Turtle has some basic instructions. It allows you to go forward, backward, left and right, much like this turtle here. And it has your pen up, your pen down. It can also fill things. So this turtle couldn't fill shapes, but this one can. So it can fill your shapes. It can change the pen color to different colors, and so it can begin your fill and end your fill. So what we're going to do, open up your trinkets, and I want you to just literally copy what's here. Now be aware, it's not letting me, there we go. Be aware that when you copy speech marks, sometimes when you paste them into trinket, it doesn't quite work. So let's see what happens. Yeah, so here you can see that it hasn't gone a different color. So you've got to check your speech marks, anything that you've copied and pasted. So now you can see it's gone a different color. Make sure my speech marks have been copied correctly. So I hope you're doing this alongside as well. So I'm going to just click play, and oh, it says bad token. So let's see what the problem is here. Oh, again, I forgot to check these speech marks. So speech marks, speech marks. Let's run it again. So what it's doing is basically all it's doing is drawing a square. So you've got a fill color of brown. It's going to, at the beginning, it's beginning to fill. It's going, this is where I'm going to be filling from. And then it goes, your pen color is red. You can just about see that that's a red pen color. Then it goes forward by 100 pixels. Then it turns right by 90 degrees, which is what we do on a square. Then it goes forward by 100, turns right by 90, goes forward by 100, turns right by 90, goes forward by 100. And then it ends your fill, which allows you to have that full color in the middle there. Now, that is task one, done. All it wanted you to do is copy that code across. Now, I'm going to be asking you to, I'm going to give you a few minutes. So what I'd like you to do is make sure you have your trinket open. If you need to remember what that is, that's in jump2.cc /python-new. I'm going to post that into the chat just so that you can access it. This is also, so this this PDF document is in the tinyurl, so go on to tinyurl.com/berrycs, as you are used to by now, I'm sure. Go into the year 10 folder, and then it's the practical Monday, Tuesday folder, and Python Turtle. So open that up, scroll down a little bit, it tells you some of the instructions here. Copy over task one, and then what I'd like you to do, move on to task two. So all you're doing for task two is replacing some things that are in task one. Instead of drawing a square with sides measuring 100 pixels, so all of these sides here are 100 pixels, aren't they? It wants you to draw a square with sides measuring 180. And instead of having a red line, it wants you to have a purple line. And instead of having a brown fill, it wants you to have a blue fill. So please have a go at that. And then once you're done, that should come up and show you a completed thing. Once you press play, you should see a purple line and blue filled square. Don't forget you're filling in blue and your line is purple, not the other way around. Once you've done that, move on to task three and then see if you can do task four. I'm going to give you a few minutes and I'm going to ask where you're up to once you've done that. So I'll leave the instructions on the screen for you there so you can remember what you're supposed to be working on, but have a go at that, please. Have a go. Right, guys, hopefully you've had a go. Definitely should have managed to complete task 2 by now at the very least. And then task 3 is just copying again and then pasting. And then task 4 is a bit more complicated, so I'm going to go through that with you. But first, I'm just going to talk about how I'm doing with task 2 here. So with task 2, it asks us to draw a square with sides measuring 180 with a purple line and a blue fill instead of a red line and a brown fill. So purple line, blue fill, that's the first thing I'm going to do. So purple instead of red, because that's the pen color, the line, and then the fill is blue. So I'm just going to change those two. And then also I want the sides to measure 180, because at the moment they measure 100. Now bear in mind that it goes forward by 100 pixels, and you can see here all of the different ones highlighted, and it goes right by 90 degrees. So you don't want to change these, because otherwise it's not drawing a square, it's drawing something else. So what was the value we wanted? 180. So I'm going to do that. 180, 180, 180, and then finally 180. So I'm going to run that. So I've got my purple line. You can see it's bigger than the one before, and blue fill. Yeah. So hopefully that is correct. All right. So again, task 3. I'm literally just copying. Again, this is a little bit more difficult to copy. Copy that. And I'm just going to, what I would normally ask you to do is save this and move on. So you might want to just duplicate the tab and paste it into a new one like that, so you don't have to. So if you want to look back at a previous bit of code, you always can do, and maybe save this somehow somewhere else on like a text document or something that you have available, or even save it as a .py document. All right. So I press play on this one, and you can see it has drawn a rectangle. Okay, like it told us to draw a rectangle. Now the differences here, let's look at the differences between the square and the rectangle. Okay, so it's going forward by 180 4 times. Okay, and it's going right by 90 3 times. Obviously it doesn't need to go right that 4th time unless you want it to face in the same direction as it was when it first entered the square. Okay, and so you've got, for your rectangle, the differences are that instead of going forward the same amount every time, it's going forward by a different amount each time. So it's 150, then 180, then 150, then 80. Did I say 180? I meant 80. But it's always still going right by 90 degrees. So that right is a degrees number, not a how far forward it goes. I hope you kind of get that. So the task 4 tells you to add to task 3 so that 2 rectangles are drawn on the screen. The second one should have sides of 120 and 190. It needs to have a red line and an orange fill. So you'll need to look back at the code for task 1 to help you with that, I would say. Or if you've opened in a new tab, look at the code you wrote before. And you can use pen up and down to have them both on one program, but not touching each other when you draw them on the screen. So that is at the front here again. Scroll back up to find that. You've got your turtle.pen up and turtle.pen down. Okay. So that is task 4. I'd like you to have a go at that. Then task 5, same idea of just copying and pasting. And then task 6 is a bit more complicated. I just want you to write some programs for at least 2 other shapes. So at the moment, we've drawn a square. Task 2 is a different kind of square. And task 3 is to draw a rectangle. Task 4 is to draw 2 rectangles on one screen. Task 5 is to draw a triangle. Okay. And then task 6 is your pentagon, hexagon, octagon, decagon, which you should be able to think about the fact that the number of sides and the external angle are linked in some way. Okay, so think about that. I'm going to give you a few more minutes again. I will be in the chat some more in a moment. But to do your task 4, your task 5, and hopefully your task 6. If you have any questions about those 3, then please let me know. I want you to complete those 3 tasks in that booklet. So I'm just going to edit this. Complete. Please complete tasks 4 to 6. Oops, let's spell that correctly. Hyphen. There we go. So, oh, that didn't work. We'll just edit this one. 4 to 6. Save that and show that. Okay, so I will continue playing a bit more music, and I hope you are able to continue with working on what. If you've got any questions, let me know. I can see a couple of you are having issues with copying and pasting. I really can't help you with that. If you're having issues, you might have to literally just write in your code yourself. The instructions are all in the booklet, so if you've got any particular issues, check that first and then ask me in the chat. Okay, off you go. Right, if you could let me know in the chat how you're doing so far, which bit you've gotten up to, that would be good for me to know. Okay, so I think most people have managed to complete task 3, where you're drawing your rectangle. I think some people are struggling on task 4, so I'm just going to go through that with you, just to make sure you have a better idea of what it is we should be doing. So on task 4, we've got our turtle.forward, turtle.right, turtle.forward. What I want to do is just copy this. So I'm going to copy that code and paste it. I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap just to show, just so that I know this is my first rectangle and this is my second rectangle. And I'm going to see what that looks like first. So I'm going to run it. And then you can see I've got a second rectangle that's been drawn straight above the other one. Okay. Now it's kind of close. It's also not doing the thing that we've asked it for it to do. So it's not got sides 120 and 190, doesn't have a red line, doesn't have an orange fill. And we need to use pen up and pen down. So I've got, oops, I keep going onto that one. Let's move that over. So I've got my first rectangle, and then I've got my second rectangle. Now, to make sure that these rectangles are separate from one another, I'm going to use pen up and pen down. These two here, turtle.penup, open close brackets, turtle.pen down, open close brackets. Now, this is a bit like when you're drawing a shape. If you're drawing a shape, then you need to lift the pen to be able to move your pen and then put it down. So I'm gonna turtle.pen up, and then I'm also going to put turtle.pen down. Now obviously if I just lift the pen up and put the pen back down, it's going to put it back down in the exact same place. So I'm just going to move it a little bit. So I'm going to say turtle.forward, and I'm only going to move it a little bit. I don't want to move it too far. Oops, make sure I've spelled turtle right. All right, turtle.forward 10. That gives me a little bit of space between the two. So let's see what that looks like. I've created my turtle, and you can see I've got that little bit of space now between the two rectangles. I could make this a bit bigger, just to make it a bit nicer to look at. Make it up to 50 instead. And you can see, oh, now I can't really see the top of the shape, but you get the idea, okay? I've got that, maybe put that down to 40 for the next one. So I've got my shapes, got my two shapes, but now I need to make sure that they are sides of 120 and 190, and that they have a red line and an orange fill. So how did we do that before? So I've got, this is my shape here, my rectangle. Goes forward by 150, right, etc. Okay. Now we need to look back at our code before to remind ourselves how to have a red line and orange fill. So we've got our fill colors. Remember to have the end fill, the begin fill, and the fill color, as well as the pen color. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy this across. And instead of blue, what's it going to be? It needs to be orange fill. Make sure I spelled that right. No, put a P in it for some reason. And then red line. So I'm changing this here to red. Now, if I run that, what happens? There is an error in this, which I can show you. It hasn't filled it in. Why hasn't it filled it in? It's missing that final line of code that I mentioned earlier. Don't forget that piece of code, that turtle.endFill, okay? So the idea here is not that you're just copying code down. The idea is that you're understanding what the code is doing and being able to use it for your own benefit, okay? So now I've got my orange line, red fill, wonderful, but it's still not sides 120 and 190. It's still only 150 and 80. So 120 and 90, 190. So let's go back to this one. No, sorry, this one. 120 and 190. Remember that I'm not changing the angle here. I'm changing how far forward it's going. So 120, 190, 120, and then 190. Now this is probably going to make it go off the screen because of the way it's set up, but we'll have a look. So we've got our rectangle. Oh no, it's about the right size. So, oh, I've put 1,900. Whoops, that was my own fault. So if I run it again without the 1,900, if I make it 190, there we go. So we've got our colored in, filled in, because we put in that end fill in there as well. So please make sure you do that. Make sure that's you've understood that. And then move on to task 5. Now in task 5, you'll notice that we're only going forward 3 times. Think about why that might be. Why are we only going forward 3 times to draw a triangle, when before we went forward 4 times? Okay, think about that. And when we're turning right, instead of turning right by 90, we're turning right by 120. Why do you think that might be? So do that, and then hopefully once you've worked that out, why we're doing it that way, why we're only moving forward 3 times instead of 4, and why we're going right by 120 instead of by 90, then that should help you work out how to do task 6. Okay, so have a go at that, please. again, if you could let me know how you're doing, how much you've managed to get done so far, please let me know. Just type it in the chat. I will play one more song and then we'll get back to the next bit. All right, so if you could let me know in the chat what is special about these numbers here, the number of sides and the external angle. Why are those useful to us? And hopefully that will have helped you create your shapes, your pentagon, your hexagon, your octagon, and your decagon. Yeah. So think about the fact that how many times it's going forward and what the angle is going to be for when it turns. Think about that. Please post in the chat, because otherwise I can't tell that you're learning anything. Please post something. So why do we have this many sides? How is that useful to us creating the code? 72 is how it makes a set shape. So 72 is the angle that we need to put in. For instead of 120 on right, we're going to put in 72. Yeah. What about the number of sides? How is that relevant? So what's 5 got to do with it? Five is the amount of turns, yeah. So if I was to show you this here, a square has 4 sides and an angle of 90. A triangle has 3 sides and an angle of 120. So if you think back to where we had the square, we are going forward, in fact, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4 times. That's how many times we've gone forward, 4 times. And if you look at the triangle, we've gone forward 1, 2, 3 times, and because that has 3 sides. And for the angle, we're going right by 90 on the square. On the triangle, we're going right by 120. Yeah. So you should be able to create your pentagons, hexagons, octagons, and decagons. Yes, well done, Joe, that you've done your pentagon. Could you also do a second shape next to it and make sure they both have different colors as well? So we're using everything that we've learned so far this lesson about to do that. So hopefully you should be able to do that. You've copied your code for triangle, and you can then go, okay, to go forward 5 times, I will draw my forward that many times. Now this value here could be any value you want it to be. It doesn't have to be 150. It could be 100. It could be 20. It could be whatever you want it to be. That just shows you the size of your shape. As long as they're all the same, all of these values here, then you should have a equilateral square, triangle, pentagon, hexagon, octagon, decagon, whatever it is you're drawing, okay? And then obviously an equilateral square is a square. That's the only type of thing it is, but you understand what I mean by that. So goes forward by however much. You can put whatever number you want in there. Goes right by, if you're drawing a pentagon, it goes right by 72. If you're drawing a hexagon, it goes right by 60, etc., etc. And then every time you write the word right, you are putting in that same angle. And then you're going forward the same amount each time. Yeah. So hopefully you should have drawn your pentagon, a hexagon, an octagon, decagon, whichever ones you prefer. And that's how to do those. Now, think about the fact that you are duplicating some code quite a lot. Next lesson, which if you scroll down you'll kind of see, we're going to move on to how we're going to use loops to make this a little bit more effective, so that we don't have to keep typing out the same thing over and over and over and over again. Hopefully that will help you to think about all of the different parts there. So what I'm going to do quickly is just complete those last 2 tasks. Yeah, we did task 4 already, where I had it drawn on the screen like this. I'll just take this off of this screen, so I've got that. So I've drawn my smaller rectangle and my bigger rectangle. And then again, I can open up a new tab. I'm just going to duplicate this tab so that I've got another tab that I can use, and just paste in the information that I've got there. No speech marks there, so it should run perfectly fine on its own. You can see we've drawn a triangle, yeah? And as we've already discussed, if you change the amount of times you go forward and you change the external angle, then you'll be drawing a different shape each time. So again, let's move this. So I'm going to make this a little bit smaller just so it all fits on the screen. So 50, 50, 50, and I'm going to change this to 72. And actually, all I need to do, I don't even need all of this, because I can just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it doesn't matter, I don't have to have that final one, but I can do. So I'm going to put that in, run it. See, I've got my cute little pentagon there. And remember, how do we fill it in? How do we make sure it's filled in? We put our fill colors. So again, if I go back to this one here, I'm just going to copy this and put it in. Got blue and purple. Don't forget to finish filling, end fill, or turtle or end fill at the end there to finish filling your shape. So I've got my purple and blue, lovely. Now I want the same thing again, but instead of a pentagon, I might want to draw a hexagon. So again, remember, if you want to lift the pen up and then go forward and then pen down again, I'm just going to copy that one. So that, again, a lot of this I'm just copying and pasting from before, but you can see I'm using the code that I've already used before. So, and instead of forward 50, in fact, I might still go forward by 50 because be a bit more useful that way. Oh, be aware though that it's already facing in that direction. So I might want it to face, I might get rid of this line so it doesn't face back where it came from. And instead of forward, yeah, that works now, because then it will be facing upwards. And so hopefully it will draw a nice thing up here instead. So what was it that I needed to draw? I'm going to draw a decagon because that's fun. 36, and it goes forward 10 times. So I'm going to change this to 36. And I'm just going to copy this piece of code 10 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's a lot of code there. Remember, we can use loops to make this a lot more effective, but we'll go on to that next lesson to remind you what we're doing there. So I've got my, oh, it went the opposite way to how I thought it was going to go. So I might just change this to left instead of right, and get rid of all of these and then copy it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then play, go again, and then hopefully it'll appear up here instead of in that direction. Yeah, so it's going left instead of right, which is kind of obvious what that does. I'm going to change the pen color and just put that in there. Instead of blue and purple, I'm going to say, I don't know, pink. That's my fill color, and my pen color can be, I don't know, red. Okay, pink and red, and don't forget to end that fill, because otherwise it won't work. It'll just be an empty thing like it already is. So an empty shape. So I've got that. I'm going to run it. I've got my pentagon, and I've got my nice pink, red, and then a pink fill. Okay, so you can see that all of that code there creates some nice little shapes. Have a go at creating some different shapes in your own time. We are going to continue working through the booklet next lesson, so don't rush too far ahead on that unless you want to sort of skip my lessons with on my live streams and not go through it with me. But yeah, so I've got pentagon, decagon. You can make other shapes as well, hexagons, octagons, using the same principles of however many times you go forward, that is the amount of sides you have, and then the external angle is how much you are turning right or even turning left, as this one is. Okay, so you can see I've got my 2 shapes there. You should also be able to create 2 shapes. So have a bit more of a go at that in your own time. But a quick reminder before we finish the lesson that there have been some lessons, there have been some quizzes and things that I've been asking you to do. At the end of last term, I asked you to create a I asked you to submit your post-test for ethics. I haven't received that from everybody yet, so I haven't been able to mark it for everybody yet. So please make sure you have submitted that for me, and because that's as before, it will go towards your marks for all of your reports and all of that kind of thing. Remember, our next live stream lesson is on Friday, same time, 12:40. Please make sure you're there for that as well. We will be going through, although it would be our theory lesson, we're working on the idea of algorithms, which is we're not going to be writing any code in the same way we have been for these lessons, but we are going to be creating, let me show you the screen so that you're not distracted. We're not going to be writing algorithms using Python or anything like that, but we are going to be talking about algorithms and how they work and that kind of the theory side of that. So that's what our next unit is for Friday. Now we do have 2 live streams, and that's because there was a vote on Show My Homework that I hope you all saw and you all most of you participated in. A lot of you didn't participate in it, so we are going with 2 because that is what the majority said. If you do have any issues with two live streams a week, please let me know. I do expect you to attend at least 1 per week, okay? So that's going to be it for this lesson. I will see you on Friday. Have a good couple of days. Bye.